And what do we have to show for this 2-year exercise in big government, micro-regulating, as Macron says, your right to have a coffee, and as the Metropolitan Police say, your right to choose which branch of Costa you get it from? Here is a graph of excess mortality per million people. That's to say, how many extra people are dying compared to the way it was in the 5 years before COVID. There's the graph. You can see the United States is there at the top with the highest rate of excess mortality per million residents, and just underneath them you'll see the United Kingdom. Now, these aren't COVID deaths. They're all deaths. They're all the excess deaths. So they include people who had stage 2 cancer and missed their checkups because the hospitals were all totally focused on COVID. So the stage 2 cancer metastasized into stage 4 cancer and they're dead. There were people who were stuck at home, bored out of their skulls and depressed, and so they OD'd on something. And there were people, presumably like that poor forgotten BBC presenter, Lisa Shaw, who had a bad reaction to the vaccine. These are all excess deaths. And there are a lot of them, and they're increasing still. Now, you can see on the graph the big bulge, particularly in the UK, from the spring of 2020. That's when the virus came roaring out of Wuhan, exploded in northern Italy, and then rolled on to Spain and Britain. So you'd expect to see excess deaths. But then we had lockdown, and if you look at it, the excess deaths just carry on rising. Spring 2021... Just look in the middle of the graph, as it were. That's when everyone's getting vaccinated. And in Britain, you can see a little bit of a leveling off, and then the excess deaths start climbing again. Same in America. Even higher excess mortality. Same general trend in France, but smaller. And likewise, a smaller rise in excess mortality per million in Sweden, which was famously excoriated for not locking down, and actually seems to have fewer COVID deaths than would otherwise have occurred. So even if you accept that government action caused fewer COVID deaths, a whole lot of other people out there seem to be dying from a whole lot of other things. Here's another graph. This is just from the UK this time, and this is United Kingdom excess mortality, showing the way it's climbed through the 2 years of COVID. So here we go. If we were to pick December 13th, 2020, the excess UK deaths totaled just over 70,000. A year later, a year of mass vaccinations and then mass booster shots, and we'd added another 65,000 excess deaths. The rate has basically been 65 to 70,000 excess deaths a year, unchanged, continuing to climb, and not coming down except for a brief blip after the first vaccines at all. So in other words, excess death of whatever is still with us. So by the crudest measure possible, because it doesn't get any cruder than the pile of corpses, an unprecedented level of big government intrusion into every aspect of people's lives has been completely ineffectual. The last 2 years have been a massive experiment, economically disastrous, to the point where not just you, but also your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be paying for it till the end of their lives. And it is, in fact, the biggest public policy failure in a world not at war. And here's my larger point. Do you remember COP26? No, me neither. But it was a big deal at the time. Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, poor old Somali migrants being kicked out of the royal suite at their Glasgow hotels to make way for the Deputy Environment Minister of Tajikistan. Imagine if everyone at COP26 had gotten everything on their wish list, all the extraordinary powers they want in order to lower the global temperature by 1.5 degrees or whatever it is. On the evidence of the last 2 years, would it have worked? Or would we all be wearing animal pelts and living in caves? Or alternatively, would it be 96 in the shade on Rock Hall? These last 2 years have been a grand experiment in technocracy, ruled by experts, ruled by science, and it is a failed experiment that has caused economic devastation, ruined lives, and led to ongoing numbers of excess